Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be doing a 12-team PPR mock draft from the 6th overall spot using FantasyPro's Draft Wizard. We're going to be drafting up against expert consensus rankings as well as composite ADP. The roster positions for today's mock draft are 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, 2 flexes, a kicker, defense, and 6 bench spots. But before we get down into this mock draft, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure they do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into this 12-team PPR mock draft from the 6th overall spot. I also boosted the positional value of wide receivers up too high because I feel as though wide receivers are going to be coming off the board a lot earlier in fantasy football drafts this year, and based upon how the FantasyPro simulator works right now, that just isn't the case in every single draft. So looking at the board, the draft begins with Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, Austin Eckler, Travis Kelce, and Cooper Kupp. Nothing crazy as a whole. I am a humongous fan of Travis Kelce, but if I'm being honest with you, at the 4th overall pick, there is no reason to take Travis Kelce. I'm taking Jamar Chase. I'm taking Tyreek Hill way ahead of Travis Kelce. Again, I think Travis Kelce's great, but in a 12-team league, I feel like the positional advantage at tight end isn't as important, to where I'm definitely waiting past pick 4 to take Travis Kelce. Obviously, if you're the number 4 overall pick and you really want Travis Kelce, you're going to have to take him there, but I'm taking someone else at that spot. So we are up to pick here. According to FantasyPros, the best player available is Saquon Barkley. Now, Saquon Barkley is currently in a bit of a pickle because we really have no idea what the fuck's going to be happening here. Is Saquon Barkley going to hold out? Is he going to pull a Le'Veon Bell, go jet ski around Miami and miss a whole year and then become a New York Jet? Or is he going to maybe sit out for some time, miss some training camp, and then a couple days before the NFL season starts, he shows up to Giants training camp? Now, I think that everything is eventually going to be fine with Saquon Barkley, and I think at the 106, some people might want to take Saquon Barkley, but based upon the fact that there is that confusion right now, there's no reason to take that risk. There's no reason to risk my first round pick, the 6th overall selection, missing the whole season, so I'm not going to take Saquon Barkley. Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, best wide receivers available. Obviously, all the quarterbacks are available, and all the tight ends not named Travis Kelce. To me, at the 106, if Jamar Chase is there, I'm taking him every single day of the week. He is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, on one of the best offenses in the National Football League. He has weekly 25 to 30 plus point performance upside. He could individually by himself put your fantasy football team on his back in any given matchup. I'm a huge fan of Jamar Chase. Had Jamar Chase not have been here, I would have went with Tyreek Hill. So Jamar Chase is going to be our pick at the 1.06. So after we went ahead and took Jamar Chase here, now the door is very open for who we're going to end up selecting in the 2nd round. After Jamar Chase, we see Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Jonathan Taylor, Tony Pollard, Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Breece Hall, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb, and Travis Etienne. So as you guys can see, even when I boost the positional value of wide receiver, FantasyPros loves running backs early, and I guess it makes sense because I think even though we're seeing wide receivers go a lot more early and often in these more these more highly skilled fantasy football drafts, I think in a lot of your regular fantasy football leagues, people are still going to be jamming the running back position early. Josh Jacobs, another guy where I am definitely concerned. I would still take him in the 2nd round, but I understand that there is some inherent risk with that, right? If Josh Jacobs holds out the whole season and you swing and you miss on your 2nd round pick, he doesn't play a single fucking game, obviously that is going to hurt your team a ton. Lots of running backs off the board. Best running back available right now, Ramondre Stevenson. Best wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So to me, if I was going to go running back, it's definitely Ramondre Stevenson. Now, it does turn out that Leonard Fournette ended up working out with the Patriots just a few days ago, and if Leonard Fournette ends up showing up as the Patriots' number 2 running back, I am going to have to backpedal on Ramondre Stevenson. Now, I'm not saying that Ramondre Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a bust, or that Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a terrible fantasy football pick, but given he goes in the second round of most fantasy football drafts, if Leonard Fournette signs with the team, you just can't be as confident in Stevenson. Again, it doesn't take away from his pass-catching prowess or anything like that. But what it would tell me is that they are not looking to give Stevenson this workhorse role. They're going to work in Leonard Fournette. And obviously, if you're taking running back in the second round, you want to be very confident, or at least I want to be very confident that they are the workhorse back. They're going to be the guy getting a lot of touches. And I just think the fact that Leonard Fournette being there would kind of ruin that. Same thing goes if Dalvin Cook ends up showing up. Who knows when Dalvin Cook is going to end up signing? So right now, with that added confusion, I'm just going to go wide receiver. I have Davante Adams ranked as the best wide receiver available. I know a lot of people are worried about Davante Adams. They're worried about the fact that he's getting up there in age. He's going to magically fall off with Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, I have talked about this topic a ton. I've beaten it like a dead horse. Ultimately, Davante Adams to me is still one of the best receivers in the National Football League. It doesn't matter if I, you, or Jimmy fucking Garoppolo is throwing him the ball. This guy is going to have immense value. The Raiders are going to be force-feeding this guy the rock, and I am fully confident in yet another big season out of Davante Adams. I would be genuinely shocked if he didn't finish as a top 10 wide receiver, and in a lot of drafts, he's being drafted outside the top 10 receivers. Because again, I'm a big Amon-Ra St. Brown guy. I love Amon-Ra St. Brown, but there is no chance I'm taking Amon-Ra St. Brown over Davante Adams. After Davante Adams comes Amon-Ra St. Brown, followed by A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, Mark Andrews, Jalen Waddle away, Waddle, till the very next day, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, and Aaron Jones. So again, we went with the double wide receiver start because I felt as though that's where the value was. I think entering into fantasy football drafts, while I do think one of the best strategies in fantasy football this season is the hero running back strategy, which is drafting one running back with either your first or your second round pick and then hammering in on some wide receivers, maybe get your stud quarterback, get that stud tight end. But in this draft, things don't fall that way, right? I'm not super confident. While I love Ramondre Stevenson, with all that's going around with the Patriots, do I want to draft Stevenson here if I'm treating this like a real draft at the 208? Right now, probably not. In a couple weeks, if nothing happens and it's Stevenson and Pierre Strong, then I'm going to be elated to have Stevenson at that pick. But right now, I'm definitely a little bit nervous. Looking at the best running backs available, Joe Mixon or Jahmyr Gibbs. Wide receivers, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel. I understand with this pick, I could potentially bury myself into a spot where I don't love my running back one week in and week out. But if the draft falls this way, I am fully confident in T. Higgins, Keenan Allen at this pick. But the problem here is that we took Jamar Chase with our first pick. So if we take Jamar Chase and we take T. Higgins, we are heavily invested in this Bengals offense week in and week out. And if the Bengals end up shitting the bed, then we are going to end up with pie on our face. We're going to end up looking down bad. What I will note is since this is a 2 flex and 2 wide receiver league, I am much more likely to be confident in drafting 2 wide receivers on the same team because most weeks you have 2 other wide receivers to help you out. So if T. Higgins doesn't have a great game, Jamar Chase has a pretty mad game, then there's still a chance you can win. Whereas if you're in a 2 wide receiver and a 1 flex league, then 66% of your wide receivers that you're starting that week being on the same team, if they both flame out, then you're going to be really down bad. So in this scenario, I'm fine taking T. Higgins, but I will note if there was only 1 flex spot, I don't want T. Higgins here. I'd probably end up going with Jahmyr Gibbs, if I'm being honest with you. So we're going to go with T. Higgins here. We are going to suck up all the value of the Cincinnati Bengals. Am I fine doing this on some teams? Like, where, imagine if the team was bad, right? Say the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I like Godwin, and I like Evans. I do. But do I want Godwin and Evans on the same fucking fantasy team in redraft? The answer is no. No, I do not want that. So T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Davante Adams are the first 3 picks for this team. After that, we see Keenan Allen, Joe Mixon, Patrick Mahomes, TJ Hawkinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Josh Allen, DK Metcalf, Dallas Goedert, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Hurts, and Christian Kirk. If you can get Jalen Hurts in the 4th round, that is about as instant of a click as I would make. I would see that I'm up to pick, and within half of a second, I am taking Jalen Hurts. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be the quarterback one in fantasy football this year. So we get to the 4th round, and here is where I am comfortable taking Kenneth Walker. Now, I know if you've been watching my channel for a while, you might have thought, Nick, you don't like Kenneth Walker. And I don't like Kenneth Walker when he goes in the first 2 rounds. Early on in a lot of these drafts, Kenneth Walker was a top 2 round pick. There is so much risk in taking Kenneth Walker there because Zach Charbonnet is a 2nd round pick, so is Kenneth Walker. And Pete Carroll was talking about early on in the offseason that, hey, these guys are going to battle fucking Obi-Wan versus Anakin for the running back 1 role in this offense. So it's not even a lock that Walker's the guy. I think we enter the season with Walker being the guy. I don't think he's the clear workhorse running back. I think he's going to lose some pass catching work to Zach Charbonnet because in college, Zach Charbonnet, fantastic pass catcher. Kenneth Walker, just kind of meh. Now, again, it's not like he has stone hands or something, but it's nothing special when you watch the tape for Kenneth Walker in terms of his pass catching upside. So in the 1st or 2nd round, I don't want anything to do with Kenneth Walker because I think he's overpriced. Like I say all the time, early on in my fantasy drafts, I'm looking to wrap my team up. I'm looking to wrap a metaphorical condom over my roster, keep it safe. But as we get deeper into the draft, I'm looking to take more risk. I think the 4th round, to some, you might say, Nick, Kenneth Walker is a little too risky for me. I get that, but I think with him being my RB1, where I already have so much confidence in my wide receivers, in Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, and T. Higgins, I want to take a shot here on Kenneth Walker being the nuts, on Kenneth Walker being the guy he was last year, just absolutely demolishing defenses, and maybe Zach Charbonnet just isn't as big of a factor as I thought he was. And again, this is something I preach all the time. While I may be off of a player, if I'm doing multiple fantasy football drafts, I don't want to be fading these guys that I might not like as much in a couple of the drafts. So if I do 10 drafts, again, I don't love Kenneth Walker, but in the 4th round, I want to get Walker at least once, because if I just take every time, I love Dameon Pierce. If I just take Dameon Pierce every time at the 407, say I get the 6th overall pick every single time in a 12-team league, then if Pierce gets hurt or if Pierce sucks ass and he's not as good as I thought, then every one of those teams has just combusted and is going to end up kind of being ass because my 4th round pick ended up being bad in all of those leagues. So after Kenneth Walker, or injury could happen. After Walker, Miles Sanders, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Dameon Pierce, Alexander Madison, the 5th opens with Wiki, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, George Kittle, Cam Akers, and Drizzy Drake London. Now, early on in the offseason, I was someone that was aggressively targeting Drake London in drafts, but I had an epiphany. It cost me 50 at Tiffany's. Shout out to Tiffany Stephanie. Shout out to Drake, the actual Drake, for that lyric from Views. But why I'm worried about Drake London is because I don't know how confident I am in Desmond Ridder. I like Bijan Robinson because I think they're going to run the ball a lot. And if I think they're going to run a lot, and they also have Kyle Pitts, can Drake London truly hit his peak in that scenario? I think he can, and I think the fact that he's in the 5th round, I am more willing to risk it, but I am starting to be a little bit more nervous about Drake London, where if you asked me earlier on in the offseason, I was saying that this guy was destined to smash. He was going to be a clear 5th round lock in fantasy football drafts for me. I'm still taking him, but I'm just saying that my confidence level in him is dwindling slightly. So looking at our team, again, Kenneth Walker, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, and T. Higgins. Looking at the board, J.K. Dobbins seems like he could potentially be in danger. I am the danger of maybe missing some time, right? He's been placed on the PUP list, but we've heard about how the Baltimore Ravens and J.K. Dobbins, they're kind of off on their contract situation, and the fact that they placed him on the PUP list is a real kind of scumbag move by the Ravens. It makes sense for the Ravens, but J.K. Dobbins might view it that way, because if Dobbins stays on the PUP, misses the whole season, then he won't accrue that year. If he holds out, then it won't actually be worth it for J.K. Dobbins, because then his contract will just get pushed to next season. They brought in Melvin Gordon as some extra insurance. I'm just not sure J.K. Dobbins is the same guy he was in the past prior to that injury. Now, again, in the 5th round, you negate a lot of that risk, right? Because you're not having to take him the first 3 rounds. but I'm still kind of someone who's staying away. I'm a little bit more worried about J.K. Dobbins, and I also think this Ravens offense is going to, under Todd Monken, become a little bit more pass-heavy compared to the past that we're used to with the Baltimore Ravens. Speaking of the Ravens, though, I love Lamar Jackson. I will continue to draft Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields in the 5th or 6th round of so many of my drafts. If you asked Nick a couple of years ago, me, of course, you said, Nick, what do you think about drafting quarterbacks early? I would say, you're a fucking idiot. Don't draft a quarterback early. You can just go ahead and get someone late. Well, I feel so confident in these rushing quarterbacks, the cheat codes in fantasy football, because Lamar Jackson can rush for 1,000+ rushing yards, as could Justin Fields. Rushing is so important at the quarterback position for fantasy football. And again, while I say the Ravens are going to pass more, Lamar is still, while it's like, oh, Lamar's going to be passing more, all this, that's a big narrative. Guess what? When the tough gets going, when Aaron Donald or some big bastard is coming to sack him, he's going to do a 360 like he's playing Call of Duty, jump to the right, jump to the left, pants the defender, and run 30 yards into the end zone, right? Lamar Jackson is still going to run the rock. I am very confident in Lamar this season. As long as he can stay healthy, he has the upside to be the #1 quarterback in all of fantasy football. Again, I don't think you necessarily need to target a quarterback super early in every single draft, but when a guy like Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields falls to the 5th or 6th round, to me, it just feels like they're mispriced, right? They should be getting drafted closer to the late 4th round. After Lamar Jackson, we see Dalvin Cook, Jerry Jeudy, Darren Waller, J.K. Dobbins, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Swift, DeAndre Hopkins, Alvin Kamara, Joe Shiesty, Rashad White, Christian Watson, as well as Mike Williams. If you guys have ended up enjoying this far, please make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hitting that like button. It would help me out a ton. So we have our quarterback, we have one running back, 2 wide receivers, and 1 of our flexes. So 3 wide receivers. Looking at the board right now, I am a huge fan of Lockett, Michael Pittman, as well as Deontay Johnson. But the thing is, when you're at the 106, there are a lot of picks coming before we get to pick again, right? We're kind of just chilling in the middle of the draft the whole time. And I feel like if we don't take a running back, there are a bunch of teams here that by the time, they get to pick, they don't have a lot of running backs, right? There's teams here, 1 running back, 1 running back. 2 of these teams just have 1 running back. So there's a chance that maybe 3 or 4 running backs go before we get to pick again. After James Conner and David Montgomery, while I do like Pacheco, there seems to be a legitimate drop-off in my confidence level. Now, I like Javonte Williams, the player, but who knows how healthy he's going to be, right? It might be 6, 7 games of the season where you can't put him in your lineup. Sure, he's in the actual Broncos lineup. Sure, he's getting carries, and maybe he'll have some flash games there, but he won't be getting enough volume to where I'm confident in playing him. So I'd rather just go ahead and secure my running back 2 here. You can kind of flip a coin depending on how you feel. I like James Conner slightly better than David Montgomery. It's just really the fact that he's the clear running back 1 on the team. Obviously, David Montgomery has more competition with Jahmyr Gibbs. James Conner actually has been one of the best running backs in fantasy football over the last 2 years when Kyler Murray has been missing. Kyler Murray could potentially miss the whole season. I don't think that is becoming less and less likely to me, but even if he misses 5, 6 games, I think that really adds a lot of upside to James Conner early on the season. I think if Kyler's playing, James Conner's going to be just fine in that case as well. The risk with James Conner is the obvious injury risk. He does get banged up what feels like every single year. After James Conner, Michael Pittman Jr., Javonte Williams, Tyler Lockett in my pocket, skirt, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Fields, Deontay Johnson, Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Pacheco, Jackson Smith, Najigba, and Justin Herbert, the pervert. So the tight ends are just getting blasted like we're in prison right here off of the board. It's the 7th round, and there really, at this point, is no need to take a tight end in like the 7th, 8th, or 9th round, because sure, I like the player Ingram, I like Freiermuth, I like Njoku, I like Schultz, but I would rather just see which of them falls to me in like the 10th round, rather than paying a 7th round price for a guy that I'm not super sold on. Look at running back. The fact that Montgomery is still here, while I would typically go with an extra wide receiver here, right? Like Mike Evans, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, I don't like George Pickens, Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison, man. Now, again, I don't think anything's going to actually happen to him. But this motherfucker was driving 140 miles an hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. Now, I get it, right? He's young. He's a rookie. If I was his age, had the money he had of a first-round wide receiver, I am probably going to be driving 150 miles an hour while getting blown by a supermodel. So I get it, right? That's what Jordan Addison was doing, but maybe he wasn't getting blown. But you get the point, right? You want to have fun. You're young. I get it. But it does make me somewhat nervous because now does the team question Jordan Addison? Do they question how much usage does he get? Could KJ Osborne be the number 2 receiver? And could Jordan Addison fall out of favor? Now, again, I don't think that's going to happen, but it does throw some questions into my head. But we are going to go with Montgomery here. Again, I think Montgomery is a really solid pick in the 7th round. He gets picked in the 6th round a lot. I think David Montgomery is going to end up being a really good player for fantasy football this season. I think the Detroit Lions are a heavily underrated offense. I think the Lions could even win their division this season. I think David Montgomery is going to be seeing so many goal line carries because Goff's going to be able to push this offense to move at a high tempo. I think we saw how many touchdowns Jamal Williams scored last year. David Montgomery definitely a better back than Jamal Williams. I know there's a lot of people that hate David Montgomery. They don't think he's very good. Maybe they've been burned by him in the past, but you were burned by David Montgomery when you had to draft him much higher than the 7th round, and I like the situation he's in a ton. After Montgomery, Dalton Schultz, Mike Evans, Brandon Cooks, Treylon Burks, Jahan Dotson, Pat Freiermuth, James Cook, Trevor Lawrence, George Pickens, Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton, and Aaron Rodgers. I've seen some people talk about how they like Cortland Sutton. They think Cortland Sutton is in a good position with Sean Payton as the head coach in in Denver, obviously coming from New Orleans. I have been one of the biggest Cortland Sutton fans alive for years. I just don't know how many times I want to be fooled by this guy, right? How many years in a row can I draft him and then just be completely and utterly let down, like left at the altar, like you think you're going to get married and then your fiance is fucking the best man in the back, right? You're just like, God damn it. What happened? Left at the altar. That's kind of what feels like has gone to happen to me when I draft Cortland Sutton every single year. It sucks. Tony in the 8th round. Look, I'm going to be honest. I get why people like Tony. He could be the wide receiver 1 in Kansas City. The guy hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. He is just a gadget player. I would rather just wait and draft Sky Moore later. I'm not burning, even though, look, I get it. The 8th round, you can be more spicy, right? It's not an early round draft pick. Go ahead and draft Tony if you want. I just feel so much more confident in literally anyone else. Like, I'd rather take Bateman, Gabe Davis, Quentin Johnston, Elijah Moore. Like, I just don't want anything to do with Kadarius Toney. I get it. He flashed in the Super Bowl. He's had some decent games. Just not for me. I'm going to go with Jordan Addison. This bastard speeding 140 miles per hour. I don't think anything's going to happen. It does not appear will lead to a suspension. Everything's going to be fine for a bad bitch, Jordan Addison Ray. But it does somewhat scare me because, again, I think the team might start to panic on, it's possible like they don't have as much trust in Addison as they might have entering just a couple days ago. After Addison, Nico Collins, Deshaun Watson, the Niners defense, Gibson, Tony, Juju, AJ Dillon, Jamal Williams, Samaje Perine, Rashad Bateman. While obviously the ADP of some players might be off in some of your opinions, I think the fact that a defense was taken in the 8th round, while crazy, perfectly simulates what's going to happen in a regular fantasy draft, right? I get if you're playing with your friends who are like Albert Einstein like you, right? They're watching a video in July about fantasy football. Maybe no defense will go in the 8th round. But even the leagues I play in, where my friends watch my videos, some asshole is bound to take the defense in like the 11th round. It happens. Not everyone waits till the end of the draft like I believe that you should. So we have Lamar. I'm not drafting a second quarterback. I just don't feel the need to. I think I'm just going to live and die with Lamar. Week 13, when he's on bye, I'm picking someone up. If he gets hurt, that sucks. We'll just cut someone on the bench and pick someone new up to play quarterback until Lamar ends up returning. So looking at the board here, we have 3 running backs and we have 4 wide receivers. I feel like the running back position does start to take a staunch, is that the correct word? Just kind of a fall off after the 10th round. So I'd rather just get one of these guys here. I'm starting to talk myself a little bit more into Rashad Penny, but again, I think this might end up just being a 3-headed dinosaur, 3-headed dragon backfield with Penny, Swift, and Kenneth Gainwell, unless there's an injury. I guess I would rather have Swift, but he goes so high. I'm going to go Khalil Herbert. I really think that Khalil Herbert's the number one guy there. Now, you might just argue, Nick, it's the same exact thing you just brought up with Penny. This could be a triple-headed backfield. Roquan Johnson, Donta Foreman, and Khalil Herbert. But the thing is, Swift is the guy I like. Now, the Eagles' backfield, you have to pay a much higher price for Swift. Where did Swift go in this draft? Can we find him, or are we blind? DeAndre Swift. And someone right now is probably like, you ever watch Dora as a kid? Now, maybe some of you guys who are older have never seen Dora, but it's like you point at the screen and it's like Dora sitting there like a dumbass, not knowing what you're looking for. That's probably what you guys do right now. You're pointing at the screen. DeAndre Swift in the 5th round, right? Like, I think Herbert could be the guy, but Herbert's going in the 9th round, and then the other running backs just go a little bit later. So I'm going to go with Khalil Herbert again. Some of his stats are really interesting, like his yards per attempt over 5. He looked really good when given the opportunity over David Montgomery last year. I'm just going to be invested in this Bears offense. I really think the Bears offense is going to be significantly better. The offensive line is better. I think I think that Justin Fields plays better. I think that helps out Khalil Herbert. After that, we see Quentin Johnson, Gabe Davis, Bills defense, Jacoby Myers, Elijah Moore, Brian Robinson. The 10th opens with Rashad Penny, Zay Flowers, Damian Harris, Jerick McKinnon, Rondale Moore, and Donta Foreman. To me, Donta Foreman is like the running back you pick up 4 years down the line in Madden franchise mode to be like your 3rd stringer, that like if everything went wrong, you'd be fine with Foreman, but he is not plan A or plan B. He's plan C or D. You might even throw your wide receiver in at running back or have the fullback play before you want Donta fucking Foreman starting for your team. So I do kind of like Darnell Here Comes the Mooney, but we already took our bet on Chicago on this draft, so I don't think we're going to go with Darnell Mooney. Looking at the board, we do eventually need a tight end. Evan Ingram, to me, his value is definitely taking a ding by the fact that they have Zay Jones, they have ETN, they have Calvin Ridley, they have Christian Kirk. I almost forgot his name for a second. Christian Kirk. Like, they have so many options. They got Tank Bigsby. I get it, though. You're taking a bet on a great offense in the Jaguars, so I'm still fine taking Evan Ingram, but I'd rather go with Njoku. I'm really big onto thinking that Deshaun Watson is going to have this major turnaround. I talked about it in yesterday's video. If you guys didn't watch that, undervalued players, I really think that Deshaun Watson is heavily undervalued this fantasy football season. So I'm taking David Njoku, who I think is going to be a big red zone threat for that team. After that, we see Sky with 2 Wise Moore, Zach Charbonnet, Tua Tagovailoa, Devin 2 Chains, Jeff Wilson, Darnell Here Comes the Mooney, Evan Ingram, Elijah Mitchell, Kendre Miller, and Jameson Williams. So we're back up on the board here. Gonna go either running back or wide receiver. I think since we went Herbert with the last pick, we probably want to have 2 wide receivers and in at wide receiver, obviously, and then 2 wide receivers in at flex. So I don't think we need as many running backs in this type of a setup. So we're to go with the highest upside pick here. I have been really, when Adam Thielen signed with the Panthers, I was in on him. Recently, I've been more off on him. I think there's still reason to believe he could be the number 1 receiver in Carolina. I get he wasn't that great last year, but we have seen him command targets in the past. He has that veteran presence in the Carolina Panthers offense. So I can talk myself into Thielen being this really reliable guy during the season. Again, maybe it's just way off, and I have been taking Chark more than him. I've taken Terrence Marshall in drafts, but I'm going to go with Adam Thielen this time. Again, when you get deeper into the draft, even if Thielen is a fucking swing and a miss, it is what it is, right? You realize 2 weeks in, the Carolina Panthers suck ass, or maybe Thielen just isn't the guy, then you can just cut him, right? You can just cut him. So after Adam Thielen, we see Alan Lazard, Greg Dulcich, Raheem Mostert, Zay Jones, Romeo Dobbs, Tyler Algier, Devin Singletary, Russell Wilson, Jalen Warren, Ezekiel Elliott, Kenneth Gainwell, and Cole Kmet. So we're back up on the board here. If you wanted to take a backup tight end because you took Njoku, I wouldn't really argue with you too much there, because unless you take one of those super high-end guys, I get why people take backup tight ends. The running backs here are starting to fall off the edge of the earth, so we will take one more. We're going to reach down a little bit and go with Tank Bigsby. He's one of my favorite sleeper running backs at Auburn. This guy's offensive line was as useless as it gets, but yet he was still able to get a lot of yards after contact. He was still able to average a solid yards per carry number. I think in Jacksonville, if something happens to Travis Etienne, Bigsby could be a league-winning running back, and even if nothing happens to Etienne, I think Bigsby could take over some of that goal line work, catch some passes, and if something bad happens, like you're in a pinch spot, you could start him in your lineup. After we went ahead and picked up Tank Bigsby, we see Tyler, Boyd, Leonard Fournette, Cordero Patterson, Eagles defense, Roquan Johnson, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Kareem Hunt, Dak Prescott, Danny Dimes, and Tyler Higbee. Higbee's the guy I was going to take as our backup tight end. Chig has fallen from grace for me with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. D-Hop is such a red zone threat. Obviously, Derrick Henry is as well. So that kind of fucks over Chig. Like, Treylon Burks wasn't that big, so there was reason to believe that Chig could be this red zone threat. Now, maybe the addition of Hopkins makes this Tennessee Titans offense that a lot of people projected to be a flaming pile of shit. Maybe they end up being really good. So we'll take Chig in this scenario because he fell to the 13th. But if you're taking Chig in like the 10th round now, you just are doing it wrong, in my opinion. I don't think that's really that smart of a choice. After Chig, we see Chuba Hubbard, Gerald Everett, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, DJ, Chark, baby Chark, Odell Beckham, Dalton Kincaid, Dallas Cowboys, Michael Carter, Gus Bus Edwards. I still think Gus is the handcuff to have. Michael Gallup, Denver Broncos, and Chase Edmonds. Shout out to the Giants for adding their 9,000th slot wide receiver yesterday, bringing in noted anti-vaxxer Cole Beasley. I love Cole Beasley, the player, on the Buffalo Bills. He was always one of those guys that was really interesting to play in fantasy. Had some good games, had some bad games. I don't know why the Giants added him, though. Just have no idea. Like, literally zero idea. It makes no sense. Like I said, they have a million slot wide receivers. So we are back up on the board here, and we are going to go with another wide receiver. We're going to take another upside shot. We're going to Isaiah Hodgins. I don't understand how he's always available late. He's literally the number one receiver on the Giants. We just talked about. Interesting. Going hand in hand there with what we were just talking about with Cole Beasley. And you get him in like the last round. It's just free. It's amazing. After Isaiah Hodgins, Jerome Ford, John Mechie, Josh Kelly, Kirk O'Chains, Pierre Strong, and then the Bucks, Jared Goff, Jalen Hyatt, Jets, Patriots. We are going to go with our kicker here since no one has taken a kicker, and we're going to go with Justin Tucker, and then we're going to go with a defense. So your strategy on picking a defense is going to be a defense playing a not-so-hot opponent week one. After week one, if their opponent is hard, tough, you just cut them, add a new defense. I make videos, make sure you subscribe down below if you are new, every single week on which defenses you need to be adding off the waiver wire. I do think the Titans have gotten better, but the Saints play the Titans, the Panthers, the Packers, the Bucks. They play against fucking Mac Jones, the Texans for the first 6 weeks. Like, you could literally play the Saints 6 straight weeks in a row. So that alone, even though the Titans might end up being a buzzsaw, I'm still fine drafting them. So our team, we get a B+. I think it's an A+, 99, actually 112. We're going to give ourselves 112 out of 100. Quarterback, Lamar Jackson. Running backs are Kenneth Walker and James Conner. Receivers are Jamar Chase and Devontae Adams. Tight end is David Njoku. Flexes are T. Higgins and David Montgomery. Our defense is the Saints. Our kicker is Justin Tucker. Our bench is I Want a Bad Bitch, Jordan Addison Ray, Khalil Herbert, Adam Thielen, Tank Bigsby, Chig, and Isaiah Hodgins. So let me know what you guys thought about the team down below in the comments section. Make sure while you're down there, you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great guys' day. And as always, good boy.